Hey folks, so I was asked to do a bit of a tutorial for Tales of Maj'Eyal, and well, I'll only go over the most basic stuff here, like moving, attacking, how abilities work, and a few other things maybe. But if you have any other more specific questions, then put a comment down below, and I might do a follow-up video about, well, something more specific, I guess. So when you start up a new game, the first thing you will have to do is enter the name of your character, all the standard stuff of a basic RPG, and then you have all the races and all the classes. And well, most of this will be locked for you in the beginning, but as you progress through the game, more and more things will get unlocked. So the first thing people usually ask is which is the best race and which is the best class. And well, I can't tell you that because I don't know what kind of gameplay you have. But as this is just a tutorial, we'll go with the Cornac, which is, well, it's basically your everyday mortal like you and me. And the warrior class, the berserker, pretty easy class. So, and the name. You have a few other options here, as well as choosing your campaign, like the arena, the infinite dungeon, and if you have any of the expansions, specifically the Embers of Rage, you can play that campaign as well. Then you have the difficulty and permadeath. If you have at permadeath, you have a few options to choose between. If you play roguelike, you'll only have one life, and when you die, you're dead. You have to start over. But you should probably play on adventure if you're new to the game. It gives you a few extra lives, so you actually can get somewhere in the game. And also, there's maybe one more thing that might be worth mentioning. Down here at your right, also there might be one more thing that's worth mentioning. At the bottom right, you have a few icons that gives you access to your inventory. It gives you access to your ability screen, as I mentioned before, and also this little screen that I showed you before. A list with all your abilities, so you can drag them down to your tool belt or whatever it's called, your journal, your character sheets, and yeah, the main menu and such. If you want to know what the hotkeys for these are, then just go into key bindings and look them up, or just continue to press the things down here. So when you first start up the game, you'll end up on this screen, which is your abilities screen, or whatever the name is, where you always start with a few stat points that you can put into any well, the usual stuff, like in any RPG, like strength, dexterity, constitution, and so on. You also have your class points, which is for all your abilities and your generic points. The difference between class and generic is the generic points, those are for abilities that any class can get if they can find someone who can teach the specific group to them. And the class points, well, all these groups here is mostly just for your class specific that other classes generally can't learn. But all this, I suppose, is for another video in itself. Now, if you're totally new to the game, or you're playing a class that you've never played before, the first thing you should probably look is what abilities you have available, but or at least look over what the computer added some points into. Now, if you know what you're doing, you can remove those points by just right-clicking on those abilities. But for now, we'll just stick with whatever the computer chose for us. The next thing you see is kind of the intro story, why you're here, and the starting area is determined by your race, and that's pretty much the only thing that affects the story. Nothing with your class or anything. The layout of the game is pretty much the same as any other RPG. If you've ever played one before, you have your tool belt at the bottom with all your skills. You have your minimap up to your right, which, by the way, you can enlarge by pressing tab. Tab again removes it, and then yet another tab, and you get it back to normal. Up to your left, you have your health bar and your whatever fuels your current ability bars. In this case, it's stamina for our character. And I'll start by saying this right away, that you can play this entire game with just your mouse, or you can play the entire game with just your keyboard. Personally, I mostly use my keyboard, and in some situations I use my mouse, but it doesn't happen that often. So to move around, you can either use your mouse and just click anywhere and move the character, or you can use your keypad to move around. Or if you don't have a keypad, you can move around with your arrow keys, but the problem with that is you can't move diagonally with your arrow keys, so you'll kind of have to make up those keys that you don't have with your mouse, if that makes sense. So to do a basic attack, you just bump into things. In other words, you just move into things and you'll attack if there's an enemy in that specific tile. The same goes for picking up items. You just walk onto them, and that goes for chests and all other stuff. What else? Your abilities. Well, they all have hotkeys, which you can see down in the left corner of those little thumbnails. You can move these around, and depending on where you place them, you will get a specific hotkey that you have to press. Like if I place it right here, where it says C1, you'll have to press Control 1 to activate it. And oh yeah, and if you can't find an ability here later on in the game, you can just press M, and it will pop up a list of all the available abilities you have, and you can just drag it down here. And yeah, let's try to go and find some monsters, and I'll just show you the basics of combat. A good thing to know when you start this game is that Z is your friend. If you press Z, then you'll start out exploring, and your character will stop exploring when it has found a hostile or he takes damage. So if I press it now, well, he stopped because he found a note and that he found a snake up to the north, I think, but it disappeared. Oh, right, the mouse. Anyway, so I can just show you the basics of combat here. Like I said, if you just walk into the mouse in this case, you hit it and it also hits you, generally. If You use an ability right next to it. If it's a melee ability, then it will target it automatically and it hits it, like my character did right now. A good thing to do after every combat when there are no enemies around is to hit R and your character will rest, or, like in this case, if there are any other enemies nearby, they're gonna pop up right away because a few turns, you're just standing still a few turns, and they'll just walk right up to you. And another thing about this game is, if you played other RPGs, they usually have either medkits or potions or something like this. But this game doesn't have that. Instead, it uses inscriptions, which can either come in the form of infusions or runes. In this case, you always start with an infusion. One infusion that has regeneration, and as you can read here on it, it activates the infusion and heals you for 60 life over 5 turns. You want to get a new one as quickly as possible, because that just sucks. You can have 3 inscriptions at the start of the game. Usually it's best to have at least 1 health infusion of any kind, one that's, well, like the one you start with, a wild infusion. It removes any effects on you, like if you get stunned or you get disarmed, something like that, and you can hit that and that status effect will be removed. And you should usually have a third one, which is kind of an escape option, either by a teleportation rune or phase door rune, or maybe even a movement infusion. But you'll find them as you continue playing. So the last few things I'll show you before I end this video will be something that will be very useful in this game, and it's simply how to wait. Now you can either just left click on yourself, and that will make 1 turn pass. As you could see, the snake moved towards me when I did, or hit 5 on your keypad, and that will make another turn pass by. That might sound a bit stupid to some people, but most of the time it's better to just stand still if you see 1 enemy and you don't know if there are any other enemies in the area, because you don't want to get a whole group of enemies coming at you right away. Also, I'll just show you how to change levels after I kill the snake, and voila. Usually it looks like this if you want to return to the world map, like this tile right here, or it will just be a path or something with an arrow. Now you can enter by 2 ways. Either you right click on your character and you hit change level, or you use the hotkey, which is the I have no idea what that sign is, but I think it's the greater than sign, the one right next to your said button. Also, there might be one more thing that's worth mentioning. At the bottom right, you have a few icons that gives you access to your inventory. It gives you access to your ability screen, as I mentioned before, and also this little screen that I showed you before, a list with all your abilities, so you can drag them down to your tool belt or whatever it's called, your journal, your character sheets, and yeah, the main menu and such. If you want to know what the hotkeys hotkeys for these are, then just go into key bindings and look them up, or just continue to press the things down here. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There are some other things with the abilities, like area effect, like this one, but I think you'll figure that out yourself, or I can do another video on it, or maybe I can do a small let's play and you'll see how it works. But then again, that's another video. So, thanks for watching, and I hope this was of some use. And like I mentioned, if you have any questions, put them in the comments down below, and maybe I'll do another video on it. So, thank you, and well, have a nice day.